So first off, I'll just get started here. Maybe wait a couple of minutes just to let people kind of get in on this. I am so excited to do this talk. I really want people to, write in the chat, say hi, like let's all do this. I have Kayla on the call with us so that she can help us answer any questions that might come up. If you get in here, just write into the chat where you're from, say hi, say hello. I want to welcome everybody, okay? I want to set my intention for this call that we are really going to get a killer amount of information out of this, all right? I've got some serious notes here. You're going to be looking at my face this whole time. I'm just going to be talking to you. And what I want to do is I really want to focus on you getting a big breakthrough right on this call. And I'm going to share a phenomenal amount of information for you to do that. The main theme of this talk is to find out kind of what we're really up against, right? Like, how hard is it really to get massively bigger results, and why don't we do it, right? Why doesn't that happen in our life? Why do we struggle to make that happen? So, who this webinar, this hangout, who this is not for, if your life is exactly where you want it to be, then obviously this is a waste of your time, right? We're going to be talking about growing and beating the things that are concerns for us and are difficult in our life. So if you happen to have it all together right now, go do something else. This is not for you. If you have all the money that you want, if you, more seriously, if you easily and regularly take action and are always productive, etc., this may not be the best place to spend your time, okay? If you're confident and happy and connected in your relationships, this might be boring for you because you have a lot of stuff figured out. But that's what's possible for people who this is for, all right? Who this is for are people, if you really, really finally in your life want to change and you want massively different results than you presently get. If you feel maybe like there's a bigger game, or there's a part of you that can kind of get in touch that there's more you could be doing, this is definitely for you. If you're someone who gets stuck procrastinating a lot, right? If you try to get things done and it's difficult for you, this is absolutely for you. If you deal with fear and anxiety, even slightly, right, that you just know it's kind of holding you back, this is definitely for you. And if you're experiencing more and more overwhelm instead of clarity and openness and ease and simplicity and success, right, if you're just kind of like, what am I doing, what's next? If you don't know your purpose, this is for you. And if you're starting to think maybe, and everybody won't identify with this, but if you're just starting to think that maybe you could be the problem, that you might just be self-sabotaging yourself and caught in some kind of negative Groundhog's Day or some kind of negative loop, this is definitely for you, okay? And I want you to have a real change right on this hangout. At the end of this, I'm going to explain a way that you can go further with me if it feels right. I'll explain a program that I have coming out, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But before that, I'm going to uncover a ton of really killer material for you. So what specifically am I going to cover today? I want to talk about human delusion, right? The fact that we're actually delusional in a lot of ways that we don't even see, and I'm going to talk about how to get out of that delusion so that we can get the highest results, that we can get, way more satisfaction and pleasure out of our lives. I'm going to talk about finding your purpose. We often think that passion and purpose are the same thing, and those are muddled. And how do we actually do something we're passionate about that feels like it's in our purpose? And how do we point that to make profit? How do we actually have more pleasure? Right? There's a lot of P's. I want to talk about all of those, but primarily today I want to talk about purpose. I want you to actually imagine being totally connected to what your purpose is in life, knowing that in your deepest being, and then just being completely aligned in everything you do toward fulfilling that purpose in your life. That's what's possible for you. I'm also going to be going through something called shadow and shadow work, and I want to explain how things can happen in our life that get stuffed down into our shadow and what that does to us and how that limits us. I'm going to talk about 1 degree different thinking, which is really about thinking bigger, but way, way, way bigger, and why we don't do it. And I'm going to talk about altering your mindset and how that can change everything like in an instant, okay? I'm also going to talk about 3 counterintuitive things that you probably don't even know are holding you back. These are 3 big things that are probably going on for you if you're somebody that this webinar is for, right, that hold you back, and you can't understand why, you don't see it. They're very counterintuitive, and once we expose those, they don't affect you in the same way that they used to. You can get much better at dealing with them. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about the one thing that has to change for you to change. There's something that if you don't change it, you don't change, period. And so it's really what the whole game is all about, and it makes it much simpler to get results and change in your life than if we're trying to do all these other things and use willpower and learn new stuff and do all these things that are really, really difficult. So there's one thing that needs to change, and I'm going to expose what that is on this call, okay? So if there's anything else that you want me to cover on this, please go ahead and write it into the comment box, and I'll see if I can address some questions in the moment or maybe at the end, right? If they come up, Kayla can interrupt me, and we can get into maybe an interesting question if it makes sense, or maybe if there's questions, I can answer them at the end. It's my intention to make this go about an hour, but I sometimes talk a lot. We might go longer than that, but I'm going to try to not do that. And if we do go longer, I'm happy to add a little bit of time for questions and all that. I have blocked about an hour and a half for this, just in case we want to go longer. But if we wrap up sooner than that, that's great. So let's talk about delusion in just a second. That's where we're sort of going to start. The most important thing that we can do as human beings, I'm curious what we think that is. And again, if you want to write in something on that, like, feel free, right? But like, what is the most important thing that we can do? I tell this story about Bill Gates because Bill Gates is obviously brilliant, right? He's wickedly smart. Still, I think I just saw he's the richest man in the world and has been for quite a long time. I don't know if that jockeys occasionally, but he's far ahead now, the wealthiest man in the world. And he went into philanthropy, many years ago. He's decided to dedicate his life to helping the world. And so we have a guy who's richer than most countries. He's actually got access to the money of many other billionaires out there. And he has influence, he's brilliant, he's got access to the smartest people in the world, he can get in anywhere, he can really affect more change than, arguably anybody. He's certainly as effective at creating change in the world as anybody with what he's got, his assets, and who he is. And so what does a guy like that choose to work on? What does he deem the biggest problem to work on? Now, the Bill Gates Foundation is doing all kinds of incredible stuff, but originally when I heard that one of the things that they were most interested in tackling was mosquitoes and malaria. And just as an aside, the reason they picked that is it's actually a fairly solvable problem, and it causes a lot of disease, and it's really a problem in Africa and other places. So kudos for that. It's a great decision, but part of me kind of went like, is that our biggest problem? Is malaria and mosquitoes our biggest problem? Now, in our culture, it's certainly not. Maybe in the world it might be, whatever. But what occurred to me in that moment is that it's not any of those things that is our biggest problem, right? Is it peak oil? Is it climate change? Is it all the wars that are going on all the time? Is it our corrupt governments? Is it like, I could list the problems and just go on, and the reality, those are like whack-a-mole, right? Like, you fix one and another one pops up and another one pops up and another one pops up. What I'm here to tell you is that delusion itself, human delusion, which I'm going to explain a lot more later in the call here, why what the delusion is and where it comes from. But I just want to say flat out that human delusion, seeing things differently and not being able to agree with other people and really see truth directly, is one of our greatest problems. And how I mean that is, if we have what I call lenses that actually tell us we're not good enough, we'll never have that money, we have certain money limits on how much we can make and all that stuff, that is our greatest problem, right? That self-delusion of what some people can't do. On higher levels, when people are really, really successful, those delusions look like my company is more important than everybody else, and so I'm just going to do whatever for profit, right? In government, it's, it's we can go to war and do this, and people are just pawns, and we can go and actually like wipe out a people for oil or something, right? We're massively deluded as human beings, and you may not agree with me yet, but if you don't, just hang in, because I'm going to explain what I mean by that, and you're going to go, oh, like, wait, yeah, we really, really are, okay? So these delusions show themselves in lots of different ways, and I want to do an exercise with you right now so that you can kind of get in touch with how a delusion may be holding you back personally. So if you could take a second, just get like centered in your chair. If you're sitting in a chair, get really comfortable. Obviously turn off all other distractions. Just bring your focus here so that we can really do something profound here. Okay. I want you to imagine how much money that you make right now. Okay, and if you want, maybe you could jot this down on a piece of paper or something, right? How much money do you make right now? Okay, now, how much money would you like to be making right now? How much do you want to make right now? Really take a second and really think about that. And if you have a pen and a paper, really write that number down. What would you like to make? Okay. So does that new number excite you? If I told you magically I can wave a wand and you can make that much more money right now, that would be pretty awesome, right? Like most of us would get really excited, okay? But I bet that what you chose the number to be is actually related to the first number, to what you make now, meaning that you didn't write, I want to make $1 billion a month down, probably. I mean, maybe some of you went wild like that, but most of us, if we make like, $70,000, right, we will think maybe I'd really like to make 6 figures. Like if I made 6 figures, that'd be a big deal. If I just made 30K more a year, or you know what, man, if I make 100 grand, maybe if I could get to that 200 grand mark, right? Now I didn't put anything around this. I just said, how much do you want to make? And look if what you chose was so limited, like it was some percentage of what you already made more, as if there's kind of an amount, right, that you should make, or that any higher than that starts to get weird, right? So, I mean, imagine this, right? If you instead took your first number of what you'd like to make and added a 0 to the end of it. So go back to what your first number was. Let's say you'd like to make $100,000 a year, right? That was your new number for some people, okay? Instead of that, why don't you add a 0 to the end and think about that? What if you made $1 million a year? What if you made $1 million a year? What would that change for you? Is that exciting? But I also want you to think about, like, what would you have to do to make that $1 million? Now I want to take it further. What if you made $1 million a month? Like, see your bank account, see your life, and see $1 million a month coming in. It's like, it's exciting, but it might also be like, I don't know that I deserve that. Like, how am I making that? I don't understand how to do it. I don't know what I would have to do to make that, right? You might start thinking, I'm too busy. That probably requires a huge corporation, or winning the lottery, or doing, I don't know what that is. Like, how do I do that? And for many of us, it might not be you, but many of us, it just doesn't feel like us. It doesn't feel like us, right? So why am I going through this? Why am I doing this? I'm saying that, number one, your goals are probably pretty small. They're probably a percentage over what you already make, and when you get realistic about it, it's like, I'd love to make 100 grand or something. But we don't actually think, I'd love to make $1 million a month, right? We don't normally do that. And even when we do that, it feels odd and different for us. It might trigger, like, I don't deserve that, or it might do all that stuff, right? And so this is just some example that we have a money limit, that there's this invisible kind of ceiling to what we feel like we should make or could make, etc. Right? Like, why do we have that money limit? Like, where did that come from that sort of sets us that, I only want to make this much more? And when I think above that limit, it's kind of weird, right? It's like it's either anxious, or I don't know how, or it doesn't feel like me. Okay? So we didn't consciously decide to have that ceiling, did we? Right? You didn't go back and say, I want to be a $70,000 a year person. But somehow along the way, that got habituated, right? It's a lens, it's a limit that we sort of put on ourselves that is a delusion. It's a form of a delusion, because we don't have this fresh slate of, like, I can make whatever I want. We have this, like, I'm about a $100,000 a year person. And there's reasons for this. It comes from how our parents talked about money. It comes from, the times that we've had our gotten broken here and didn't get that job, and what we end up believing about ourselves. But the point is we didn't consciously choose that. We've got money limits that are unconscious to us, and we're living inside them, making all our choices. It limits all our thinking, and it does all that, okay? So this is set up unconsciously, and I'm going to explain a little bit even more about that in a bit, but I just want you to realize that we're set up unconsciously with these kind of glass ceilings, And we just did one example, which is money, okay? They also come up in relationship. They also come up in health and fitness. They also come up in all these other areas of your life, okay? So, you know, these limits become a set point for us. They become this, if you think about, there's a really good example of an air conditioning system in a house, right? Once you set the set point for an air conditioner, if, you know, this, like maybe it's set to, you know, 70 degrees or something. Well, if all of a sudden it gets too hot, like it starts going up and now it's 73, 74 degrees, what happens? The air conditioning pops on and it will cool the room to bring it back down to the set point, right? And all of a sudden if it starts getting too cold, right, the automatic thing will kick on, the heater, and all of a sudden it'll heat the room back up to 70 degrees. And it'll stay within this little window of a comfort zone to make your house comfortable. Well, that's what our psychology is doing for us as well. That's what's happening to us psychologically and unconsciously. We've got these set zones. We've never really edited them or chose where they were, but now we hang out in this comfort zone. And for many people, it's not very comfortable. It's actually kind of miserable. They're constantly complaining about no money, whatever. But if they all of a sudden get money, they find very quickly that they end up back in their comfort zone. And the best example of that is a lottery winner, right? Why are almost every lottery winner that's ever won as poor and oftentimes poorer than they were before they won the lottery? Why do you think that is? Let's think about that for a second. How is it possible that you hand $100 million or something to somebody who's a regular Joe, and all of a sudden, before you know it, they have people come and take that from them, they waste it themselves, they make bad business decisions, they do whatever, and before you know it, they're back down to whatever. Now, I haven't looked at that stat lately, right, to see if that's 100% accurate or not, but I've heard that over and over and over again, and there was a time where I did see a study on that where an enormous amount of lottery winners end up back where they were. Why? You know, why is that? And by the way, it's because of our comfort zone, right? It's because it's unnatural. Our friends don't hang out there. The whole ecology of our life doesn't hang out in that space, right? So we end up living into what we think we are. Instead of being able to change our identity into this powerful person who now has means and money, learn the things that we need to do and do what we need to do from that place, we end up self-correcting and coming all the way back down to being really, really small. Okay? And if you're saying to yourself, and check in with your own inner voice, you know what, that doesn't apply to me. I would be one of the outliers, right? This isn't, that limit wouldn't affect me. I would totally keep the money. Every one of us probably thinks that if we hit the lottery, we would be cool. Like it would change our life and it would be a big deal. But stats show, right, that that's not the case. We have a set point and we are comfortable in making a certain amount of money, and so that's what we make, all right? So, you know, nothing is going to work if you're set to unconsciously self-sabotage, right? No matter what assets you get, no matter how much you learn in business, no matter what kind of new connection you make, no matter how much money might come to you in a certain month, if you're set to sabotage yourself unconsciously, it's going to be a problem. And one of the issues is it's really hard to see if we are self-sabotaging ourselves, right? Because we don't do it consciously, right? What's the word? It's unconscious. It's outside of our conscious attention. So what we're thinking about, what we know, what we're aware of, is not the self-sabotaging pattern at all, okay? And that's totally scary to me, right? Because this can be happening and we're not even aware of it. It's like we're in a delusion, right? It's like we don't really see the truth about ourselves. But if I ask some of you, you might start to realize that, yeah, like I'm starting to feel like there's something holding me back, that I keep like not doing my work, I keep not showing up for these opportunities, or I keep kind of messing with myself, right? So forgive me for doing my nose, I've got a tickle going on. So, you know, that's completely scary, that this is out of our conscious awareness that it might be going on. And so what do we do about that? Like, how would we address that, right? Well, if we don't address it, first off, right, the simplest thing is that this can lead back to a loss in confidence and fear, right? If we're not able to kind of like run our life the way we want to, what happens is these simple little things in our past can give us meanings that later in life really, really limit us. I want to give an example of an old client of mine who heard when she was younger, somebody just called her fat, like behind her back. And now she's, you know, probably 12 or 13 years old. She's not even fully into her body yet. And you know, somebody who's insecure himself or whatever says something mean in the moment, right? And all of a sudden now she hears that, and now as an adult, what she's thinking all the time, every time she puts on her clothes, every time she goes out, every time somebody's looking at her, anytime somebody takes a picture, right? She's thinking to herself, oh my God, I hope I'm not fat. That one little comment from, you know, not even a bully at school, but just somebody who said something mean, right, can have such an effect on what we choose to do, what we think is possible for ourselves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Another one, I just was having, I just opened up a handful of breakthrough sessions with people, and I was talking to somebody just, I think it was yesterday, and this isn't like the biggest deal in the world for him, but it's another example of how these subtle little things can lead to stuff, right? For somebody, he was laughing in middle school or something, and somebody behind him mocked his laugh, right? He was feeling really trusting and open and like finding something really funny, and maybe he had a funny laugh or it was loud or what, you know, whatever. We would laugh like that, and then some jerk in the back went like bah, 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 behind, like making fun of his laugh, right? And so what we found in that is that in some way that starts to lead to lack of confidence socially out in the world, right? And I hear this literally all the time, not because it's I have a lot of people with that problem that come to me, because we all have those limits. This is how we get set into who we are and what we think is safe and what our identity thinks we're capable of and what we can do. Okay, so that little chuckle that was 15 seconds, it was a nothing, right? It didn't mean anything really. It was just somebody being a jerk because he heard you funny and he thought he could get attention by mocking you in a second. Leads to a lifetime potentially of feeling less confident meeting strangers, feeling less confident laughing in front of others, feeling less confident, I don't know, presenting or doing anything, right? Going for a job interview. Just a slight social awkwardness. What's the cost of that over a lifetime if we don't learn how to deal with that and what to do, right? So it's a big deal how these things happen. These get wired in as protection mechanisms and keep us really, really small. So then, purpose, right? How many of us, I just want to mention kind of a whole nother degree of this, right? Purpose. If we don't know our bigger purpose, what does that feel like, right? It feels aimless. If we don't know kind of like why we're doing what we're doing and connect into that bigger kind of feeling of ourself, really what's the point, right? Then we're just kind of, I don't know, going to the bar for beers to get through the week to just do it again the next week, and there's really no purpose to the whole thing, right? But there's a way to actually connect into your unique talents, your unique passions, and point those at a unique purpose where you get called into something really, really big, right? Think about Martin Luther King and Gandhi and these people that are just moved to do way bigger things, right? Do you think they ever got up and were like, I don't know what to do today, and I think I'm going to procrastinate? They were psyched to get into, you know, doing these bigger things, right? Because they were filled with a deep level purpose in their life, okay? If you don't have purpose, what's going to happen is that limited, you know, glass ceiling, all these other little limits, this small version of you, when you're way bigger than that, that small version of you ends up getting stuck. And even if you do get connected with a purpose, it's based on a very limited self-concept of you. And so you set these little purposes. They're not big, they're not bold, they're not amazing. One of the most meaningful things I do with my clients is help them get connected to what they're doing here and why, and what they get so excited about is like, like that's what I'm here to do, right? This is amazing, okay? So if you don't have your purpose, that's another indication that it's not all lining up for you, because there is something here that's important for you to do, uniquely you, okay? So this kind of echoes the idea of the limit, right, in the money, and why we kind of naturally think small, okay? And this is where I want to get into the section of what is this 1 degree different thinking? What is this, and I could also call it like, what is 10 times different stuff, right? I was just listening to, I think it was Peter Diamandis, talking about how, you know, we just all naturally, and this survey that I just put out totally showed me this as well, we all naturally pick these goals, and when I said, what is a breakthrough for you, everybody's breakthroughs were so little, right? They were, number one, they were really, really achievable, and they were teeny, right? We weren't thinking about what does a whole new life for me look like? if I really became who I wanted to become, what would that look like for me, right? But most people are like, well, I'd get that, I'd get that new job, or I guess my girlfriend wouldn't fight with me, or my partner wouldn't fight with me as often, or I could just finally have a weekend where I was at ease, or maybe I'd get to pick a hobby that I really like. I mean, they're teeny, right? And that just shows that we're 1 degree off on our thinking of, like, what should we be doing, right? I want to inspire you to think completely new, right? Because whatever happened in the past doesn't have to affect where you are now and what you can do in the future. Let me give you a story. A past client of mine and mentor of mine and friend of mine, Eben Pagan, tells this story sometimes, and I really, really like this. I want you to imagine a white wall, okay, big, long white wall that actually represents your life, okay? And the beginning of your life is you starting out in the bottom left corner of that wall. And you're going to paint your life right now, okay? And so you happen to choose some colors and you paint your life, and then some things happen to you. Oh, wow, here I'm 3 and these things are happening to me. And then I'm 4 and, well, it got a little brighter, things got better, and then we're doing this and we're doing that. And before you know it, you end up an adult, and you've got this whole painted picture of your life, right? Maybe I can do that in reverse so it looks like you writing from left to right, right? So you've painted this picture across this wall, okay? And it's beautiful. Well, how do you choose what to paint next with your life? If we get to right at this moment, and your life is a painting up to here, what do you choose to paint? What most of us do is we look back at what we painted before, and we keep painting, we keep adding on. And this is that, I'm going to tell you what the 1 degree difference is in a second, right? Doing that is not thinking differently. Even if you think, like, well, how much better could I make this? If you leave your past influencing what your choices are now, if it's all been brown so far, you're probably going to paint a little more brown, or maybe you'll slightly change the color or whatever. But if we can just spin around, right, and just change our thinking in this one little way, just spin around and actually look at the rest of the wall that's all white. It's all white. You can paint anything you want from right here, right now. You can start again and paint whatever you want. The past that was all these limits, like, hey, Rob, no, I can't start over again. You don't get it. I'm a loser. I'm bad. I'm bit. I don't even care if those things are true. I don't even care if they actually happen to you. They're not useful to think about. They're not helpful, right? So put them down. Put them down and look at the rest of your life as if it's a brand new canvas, because it is. It's a brand new canvas. You can paint anything you want. But of course, if we're left without this new level of thinking, right, what do we do with that? We end up painting just very naturally onto whatever we've painted before, and we continue kind of the same picture, which feels like we're really not capable of change. If we keep doing that, it feels like we'll never, ever really change. And so if we change that, if we spin it around, if we think just a little bit differently of, like, wait, I don't have to carry this with me, I have a whole new canvas, now what is different for you? What would you really like to break through? What would you really like to be and become? Do you want to start a huge company? Do you want to really affect change in some area like global warming or climate change or whatever the stuff is? What do you really care about, right? If you lose all the limits that you aren't even aware you've had and you just start fresh right now, how big can you think and what can you do? Okay? So really important to do that. I wanted you to apply that so that you look at what's coming and don't just go, no, that won't work because it didn't work before, right? Well, if that were true, none of us would ever change. And I'm not going to go through my story here, but if you follow me at all, you've probably heard I've done a lot of changing in my life. It's incredibly possible to change. Okay, so somebody else that I was just talking to, if we talk about this, just 1 degree different thinking, right? Just actually put down your limits, put down what you think, and rethink about it new as if anything is possible. All right. Somebody that I was talking about yesterday came to me, and he's a fantastic guy, and he's in his 60s, and he's experiencing ageism, or so he said, right? And because of that, he also had a certain niche that he was really clear on. Okay, and this is a conversation from yesterday. He has this idea about himself that he was too old, or people perceived him as too old, and he had an idea about himself that there was no work for him because a niche that he had chosen 20 years ago had dried up, right? It had changed, there were challenges with the economy, all that stuff, and because it had dried up, there was nothing for him now. And I was like, well, neither of those are useful. right? Let's just drop those and let's rethink the whole thing. What are you good at? Turns out the guy is a total rock star in PR. I think, if I remember correctly, he told me that way back when he used to work at a news organization, I think he's the guy that hired Peter Jennings at, I don't know what, ABC or CBS or somewhere like that, right? This guy's a player. Like, he's really been around a long time, and he's been in PR forever. He knows way more than I do or anybody I know does. He's phenomenal at it. And I was like, you have this total opportunity to rebuild yourself in this way. And with this 1 degree different thinking, it was like, oh, wait a second, I can do this. So mindset shifts by just a degree can change the whole game, all right? So I really want you to think about that. If you have a piece of paper, start brainstorming, even while I'm talking now, like, what could really change for me? What could I put down and rethink, okay? Now, granted, this is hard, and we're going to go through 3 of the mistakes that we're making right here really soon. I just want to make sure I'm going to check in here and make sure everything's happening. I'm not sure if our comment system is working. That might not be happening right now. So I'm just going to storm ahead and talk about the top 3 mistakes that we're making. Okay? So mistake number 1 that we're making is that we are on autopilot much more than we realize. We have the idea that we're actually in control of our lives, but our subconscious actually runs way more of our life than we realize. So I have a lot of stories that I tell about this sometimes. I'm just going to go through it really quickly and not tell those big stories right here, okay? The autopilot that we're on, it comes from our subconscious, which, number 1, is super powerful, right? It actually runs way more of our behavior than we believe, which, again, is really counterintuitive because it feels like our conscious mind's in control. But it's not in control. Our conscious mind doesn't make our heart beat. It doesn't make our blinking happen unless we consciously intend it. Our blinking's happening all the time. It doesn't manage the temperature and the heat in our body. It doesn't like go and fix, cuts and heal ourselves. It doesn't do any of these things. It also doesn't make us jump out of the way of an oncoming bus when we just look up, right? Our subconscious keeps us safe, and it's super powerful around our behavior and our choices and what we choose to do, okay? And what's important to understand about our subconscious and kind of this autopilot that we're almost riding on top of, it's almost like it's this huge elephant, right? And we're just trying to drive this elephant, but the elephant really isn't trained. It's kind of doing whatever it wants to do in a certain sense, okay? So how can we actually train this elephant to like do what we want it to do because it's so powerful in our life? And here's its only motivation, okay? Its only motivation is that it wants to survive. Okay? Your subconscious is just trying to make your body survive and live. It doesn't care about your higher level goals. It doesn't really care about your happiness or your emotional well-being. It just wants you to keep your heart beating and just, propagate the species if it can. It's got base level drives where it's just trying to keep you alive, and it's wildly powerful. Okay? But it also wants to keep, besides just your body, it wants to keep your identity alive. It wants to keep your sense of self alive. There's new studies that show, right, that we're trying to keep our sense of self alive all the time. So our identity ends up getting hardwired into us naturally, right? And things that are new and different are ultimately dangerous to the subconscious. So another reason why it's so hard to change is that we're on autopilot. This autopilot is essentially our subconscious. It's driven just to make us survive, which it does very, very well, by the way. Okay, survival is not a concern of ours as humans anymore in the same way it was before. We are surviving, and I can give you a stat to explain that, right? I believe 1804 was the first year that there was 1 billion people on planet Earth, okay? Never before that was there a billion people. We struggled and struggled and struggled to get to a billion people, and it took until the year 1804, which was only about, a little bit more than 200 years ago. In the past 200 years, we have more than 7 times ourselves. Survival is no longer the problem, and yet we have all these survival mechanisms that keep us small and little and afraid and not doing the big things and all this stuff so that we don't like go out and participate in the world, right? To survive, right? It's like set to survive, but we're surviving. That's fine. How do we put that down and actually rewire the subconscious so that these things that we want to do that are better for us building the big business, doing the sales calls, losing the weight, getting out there in front of people, doing public speaking, having a blog habit, whatever those things are, right? How do we actually train the subconscious so that we do them naturally and authentically, and we don't have to fight, all right? I'm going to talk more about how willpower plays into this a little bit later in the talk, but the reason we need willpower is because we're trying to do things that don't actually jive with our identity, right? If it doesn't jive with us, it feels new or different, we have to apply conscious will to make it happen because it's unnatural. And the only time a habit actually becomes something that's natural and just a part of what we do, people say it takes 30 days, or it takes less if it's a pleasurable activity, it takes more if it's a harder activity, right? It takes a little bit, it takes a while to do that. The process is our subconscious actually normalizing it. And eventually when we finally wake up one day and go, you know what, I just go to the gym, that's what I do, right? Now we no longer need willpower. We've normalized it and it's become a real habit for us, right? It's become something that we do. We don't have to try to do it anymore. But before that, all the new behaviors to become new, the reason they're new and different is because they're not us. They don't feel normal to us, so we have to consciously try to do something that's like not natural and normal for us, right? Okay, so hold on to that. I'm going to come back to that in a little bit. That's really powerful, all right? But this number one mistake is that we don't know that we're really on autopilot, and if that autopilot is wired to do things that are unhealthy, like smoke cigarettes or avoid public speaking or not get the raise, or it thinks like it's safe to not be socially engaging because it learned somewhere back that it was dangerous, right? Let me go back to that example of being mocked in school, either being told you're fat or somebody making fun of your laugh or whatever, right? That makes us shut down because socially, if we get rejected, if people tease us or we get rejected in any way, okay, we might get ousted from the tribe, okay? And back when survival was much harder than it is now, if we got ousted from the tribe, it might have meant death, okay? We might have died if they left us. If they didn't like us enough to kick us out, if we didn't pull our weight or whatever, right? If people started talking bad about us back then, we might get left behind. And if we got left behind, survival was much, much harder. So we are coded to be concerned about all these little things. And so just a little somebody making fun of your laugh can ultimately get coded into your subconscious of it's not safe to be at ease and have fun with people, right? Or it's not safe to be in my body. And we get all this self-hate and all this self-concern over this. That all is kind of going on way back in the subconscious until sometimes we notice it and we get nervous, but it's running all the time as a protection mechanism, okay? So if we get set, and we all do with our socialization and all these different things, we get set with this limited identity that we didn't choose. We didn't consciously say, I want to be afraid of people mocking me. We didn't consciously say, I only want to make this much money. You are sitting on a self, on a version of you, that came to you haphazardly. You didn't create it. You haven't consciously decided it. I'm going to share later that you can consciously decide it, that we can actually go right to the root and actually change your very identity so that you get different results. I'll talk about that in a minute, okay? Let's go to mistake number 2 that we make. We focus on formula and strategies and tactics way too much, okay? Now, they matter, and when I mean that, I mean if we sort of make a new decision like I'm going to become an entrepreneur, or I'm going to learn how to lose weight, or I'm going to be better in relationships, or I'm going to learn more about how to be a loving partner, or whatever those things are. Let's say I want to become an entrepreneur. People immediately go, they ask the wrong question, okay? They go, what do I need to do to become that? What do I need to do, right? What do I need to learn? What do I need to study? What do I need to become? But that's the wrong question, because whatever you learn, whatever you study, whatever you become, whatever assets you have, if your self is set to self-sabotage, if it's set with limits, etc., right? It almost doesn't matter what you learn, what you do. It'll never normalize. It'll never happen in a way. Now, if you really try and use your willpower and do all that, you'll have incremental gains, but you won't have massive success unless something else changes, right? The right question is, who do I need to be? Who do I need to be that entrepreneur, okay? So look at one. One is taking the one that's not the entrepreneur, that has limiting beliefs and is all stuck in self-sabotage and all that, and says, I think I have to learn something. I have to augment this kind of, quote-unquote, broken version of myself. And if I do that, maybe I'll become this different thing. And we end up in this time thing of I need to become different, okay? But it's not about becoming. It's about who do I need to be now so that I can actually get these results that I want. How can I actually internalize the identity of an entrepreneur now? Now, that doesn't mean I've learned the things I need to do. I still need to go do that study. But the right question first is, who do I need to be, right? If I want to win at the Olympics, who do I need to be to do that? The guy that wins at the Olympics, who is that guy, right? Because who you are with all your limits and all your self-concepts and all the bad stuff that's going on for you, if you think about a guy out there who's really got his stuff together and is getting the results that you want, that person is very different than you, right? They think different thoughts than you do. They have different behaviors. They've habituated different things. They have different value systems, right? They literally are different than you. And so change is not about how can I hold on to who I am and all my limits and all that and just get these different results. It's really like, who do I need to become? Like, what are the thoughts I need to think? What are the behaviors I need to have? And until you figure that out and change who you are, change doesn't happen. Okay? And I'll probably talk about this later again, but the only reason that habits ever work and willpower ever works to change you is that if you do it long enough so that you actually change how you see yourself, how you see the world, and what you think and what you know and all that stuff, okay? Then your identity has actually changed, and you're like, wow, now I'm somebody who actually is an entrepreneur. I'll make the sales calls. Now I am somebody who does these things in the now. I'm actually changed in the moment, okay? So the question is, who do I need to be, right? That person over there that has what you want, they think different thoughts, they have different actions, they have different habits. How do you become that person so that you're integrated, it's normal in your subconscious, and these new behaviors are automatic, and you just immediately become the person that will do the behaviors, the person that will get, you know, the results, okay? So that's number two. We focus on formula, strategies, and tactics, and we don't look at ourselves and say, how do I need to change? Who do I need to be to get these results first, okay? And the third thing is, we can't see our own limits, and this becomes our own self-delusion about ourselves, okay? So I'm going to explain a concept about lenses. I mentioned lenses before, but let me talk about them for a second, okay? If you think of a lens, right, a lens in a glasses that I'm wearing, or a contact lens, or a microscope, or a telescope, right? These all use lenses, okay? Well, what do lenses do? Lenses alter reality, right? They either bring something closer, or they make it farther away, or they make it blurry, or they might make it crystal clear. It might be an advantageous lens, but often if you just picked up a random lens, it wouldn't be the right prescription, and it would make you see differently, right? Okay? Now, a quality about lenses that most people don't really often think about is that they alter reality. We know that. Lenses change what we see, right? That's what they do. That's what they're built to do. But they're also built to be invisible, right? Lenses are built to not be seen themselves, right? They're built to look right through. And in fact, if I actually have scratches on my glasses, or there's raindrops on them or whatever, they no longer function as well as a lens. As soon as I become aware of the lens itself, it doesn't do the same altering thing to reality. I become much more aware of what's kind of really going on, okay? So what I want you to understand is that lenses alter reality, and they're built to be invisible. We look right through them without seeing them. Well, that's what our beliefs and our internal thinking is going on, okay? We actually look through different lenses at the world, and we've picked up these lenses from all these things we've been taught, times we've been hurt, we've been emotionally here, and we make these different assumptions about, well, people don't like my laugh, so whatever, or people, you know, think I'm fat, so, you know, it means this, right? And what those end up being is, those end up being the lenses that we look at the world through, but they're invisible to us. We can't see them. It actually feels like truth to us. I am too fat. My laugh is annoying. People don't actually like me. I am limited, right? Because I can't see the lenses that I'm looking through, okay? And so what we have to do is we have to back up and actually see our lenses and get our prescription right, actually alter them, actually get them out of there, okay? And there's a practice of doing this with our awareness where we can actually become aware of our own limits. Now let me go all the way back to where I started. I said in the beginning that we're delusional as people, right? Well, let's think about that, right? Let's take a die-hard, you know, conservative Republican who has all his or her beliefs about that platform, right? What is that person doing? They're looking through their lenses, and they're sure that they're right. Okay, they're positive that they're right. Absolutely. But let's take a person who's diehard liberal, right? Absolute other side of the coin. They look through very different lenses, right? They see very differently, and they're completely sure that they're right. Now let's look at like a big corporate CEO who's thinking about, like, I don't know, Exxon, corporate CEO, right? Who just had an oil spill and all that. Well, that guy's looking through a lens of like, I've got 60,000 stockholders, and we give so many jobs out, and all this stuff that the political structure should back me up and do what I say, and right, there's a delusion about how important that person is. Delusion, I just mean by their lens, right? The way they see the world. But see, the thing is that we don't know how we see. We just think that we're right. We just think that it's fact. And when those lenses turn out to be not just political affiliations, or think of somebody who is a diehard Greenpeace person, right? Do you think they have different lenses than the CEO of an oil company? Right? Absolutely different value systems and different lenses, right? But those lenses, they don't feel like lenses to us. They feel like truth. They feel like, I'm just right. What are you talking about? Now, those are lenses in one sense, right? But the lenses that I'm talking about that are limiting you, and that are this huge mistake, and that are the things you can't see about yourself, are all the limiting beliefs that you have about yourself. I'm not enough. I'm not smart. I'll never be successful. I should only make $70,000 a year. Whatever they are, the list might be long, right? And everybody that I work with that does these exercises with me, we find I am never at a loss for how sad it makes me that these people are living with these limits. These are limits that they would argue for. They would tell me, no, 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 it's true. I am a loser, right? And my question to you is this. Is that useful to think that? I don't even care if you have evidence of it. It's just not useful. It's just not a helpful frame. It's just not a helpful lens. And what I can help people do is actually find that we can actually alter and get rid of that lens altogether, so that you can see completely differently. Options open up. What you do opens up. All of a sudden, the limits that you thought you had become vapor, and you actually go, that was ridiculous that I felt that way, right? I didn't put together any videos or testimonials or anything like that for this talk. I didn't really have time to, and they're on my site. There's other places. But people, almost every time that we go through this, 2 weeks later, they don't identify with that limited sense of themselves. Their identity has truly shifted into somebody who can laugh at those limits. They'll go like, wait, I can't believe I thought that. I can't believe that I was holding myself back in that way. That's so ridiculous. And they're completely at ease. They're completely happy with who they are, and they haven't lost a thing, right? When I talk about identity shifting, I'm not talking about becoming a different person, because that would make our ego like really scared. Like, I like me. I don't want to be a different person. I'm talking about shedding your limits so that you can be the best version of yourself. I often say better than the best version, because you can't even imagine from the limited place how incredible you could be. Like what you amazing looks like, right? But I mean, let me invite you for a second to think about that. Do you ever have those glimpses of what might really be possible for you if you weren't held back by your own stuff, right? If you weren't limited by your own junk, right? How much more could you do if you didn't procrastinate, if you didn't like feel fear about big moves, and if you didn't like get nervous about meeting big important people and connections and all that stuff? What would change for you, right, if that were the case? Okay, so there's a version of you probably that you, just like you didn't imagine the right amount of money, a bigger amount of money, there's a version of you that's so much bigger than you can even kind of see at this point. All right. And lastly, I want to let me just jump ahead, because I'm flying through time here. I didn't realize it would go this fast. I want to talk about shadow work for a second, okay? Jungian shadow work and things like that. It's really important that we realize another level of delusion, right, that we have going on, okay? So let me back up for a second. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I said before we'd go over the 3 big mistakes, these kind of counterintuitive mistakes. Let me just repeat those. Number 1 is we're on autopilot way more than we realize, right? Our subconscious is driving this train, and if it's set negatively, until we alter that, we're stuck, right? We're just going to keep having the same results because it's happening outside of our conscious awareness. Number 2, we focus on formula and strategy. We think that we're going to augment us with new information, but we really just need to augment us, right? If we don't start with like changing our identity into who we need to be, all those other things aren't going to stick because we're just going to pile it on top of limiting beliefs and all this other stuff, all right? And then thirdly, sadly, our limits are invisible to us because they're built to be invisible to us. They're built to be lenses that we see the world through. We think they're true. We judge ourselves that way. We judge our circumstance that way, and all of this stuff is invisible to us. And now I want to add on, hey, we've got shadow going on too, okay? So stuff gets shoved down in our shadow emotionally. If you don't know anything about this, I'm going to go fast, and this may be confusing. But what happens is we found through Jung and others actually worked on figuring out this model that when emotions are overwhelming or unacceptable to us, we often in our conscious we shove them into our unconscious and we don't deal with them, and yet they still come up, but we don't self-identify with them, and so we may actually feel like really angry about something, but we don't think we're angry. We just think everybody else is angry. We actually project our feelings onto other people. And psychologists actually think that a huge percentage of our misery and our sadness and our struggles is because we're being triggered into some shadow level stuff. So let me show you what this looks like in a just everyday kind of way, right? Let's say that you and I are roommates. Okay, we actually are. We live together in a house, and we share roommates. And I come home, and you know, the guy next door is trimming the hedges again, and he's wildly anal about it. Like he's constantly making the hedges perfect, and it's bugging me at a level that I can't even stand. And I'm like, ah! And I come in and I say to you, like, can you believe it? You know, Tony's out there doing the hedges again. It makes me nuts, right? I'm losing my mind. I don't know why he has to do that all the time and everything, right? And so then you would look at me maybe and you'd say like, yeah, he's doing the hedges, but like, who cares, right? Who cares? And so shadow is not delusion, like it's not happening, but we get triggered and react in relationships and in all these other ways because we're not totally in touch with our whole internal emotional system, okay? And so what happens is something did happen, right? The guy is doing his hedges, but to me, it's maddening. Like I can barely deal with it, right? It just bugs me. I hate it. It makes me angry, whatever. Or something else happens and I get really, really scared about it. And somebody else is like, hey, that's not scary. Like you can totally do that and whatever. Or someone else is like, hey, he's just cutting his hedges. Why don't you relax? It's not a big deal. We end up, and they're invisible to us again, because they're in our subconscious, we end up having all these shadow triggers and stuck places, right? And so there's a process to help us actually find those. So much stuff around relationships, right? Either nervousness to start them or fights in the relationship, right? Is all this shadow play where we're being triggered in ways that we don't understand or see, and we react. We feel unsafe. We feel angry. We feel jealous. We feel all these difficult things. And if we don't unwrap that, we end up with a real issue. Okay, we end up with a real issue. So when it wasn't okay to feel certain things as a child, your parents, your friends, your girlfriend, your boyfriend hurt you in different ways, we often stuff that down. Our emotions get stuffed down into our shadow, into our subconscious. We deny it, we don't process it appropriately, and we end up projecting our junk onto other people, our anger, our sadness, our scared, all that, okay? 95% or more of psychological issues can be attributed to this in some people's opinions, all right? And it's a huge, huge hassle. So if we don't overcome this shadow stuff, we're stuck also. So let's just go through what we're stuck on here, right? Everything I've kind of listed so far. We've got shadow going on that's messing with us. We've got a subconscious that's incredibly powerful, and it's keeping us from doing regular things that lead to change and growth, right? Regular familiar things, but we stay limited because our subconscious is set to self-sabotage, quite frankly, right? We think that it's in the formulas and the strategies, so we buy more and more classes, we buy more and more books, we work harder and harder to do these different things, and yet we don't really change. Instead, we actually hold on to our identity. We still think, no, I'm still not an entrepreneur. I've got to read another thing. No, I'm still not good at sales calls. I've got to get more training. I've got to do more stuff. Instead of learning that we actually have to become okay with those things first, that we have to actually alter internally. The next thing is we can't see our limits because they're lenses and they're built to be invisible to us, right? So other people might be able to see our stuff better. A coach, a therapist, friends of ours often can see our own junk better than we can, okay, through our behavior and through our outcomes. And then we're often stuck feeling unconfident and exhausted by overwhelm in the world, the amount of choice we have and all that. So what do we do, right? What do we change to make this work? There's only one thing that fixes all this stuff, okay? The only thing that needs to change is our self-concept. It is our identity, okay? Now, that doesn't say that there aren't technical things you may need to learn if you want to go be a programmer or whatever. You will have to learn stuff too. But if your identity is limited, right, you're going to self-sabotage. You're going to do all these things. And I want to go over self-concept again. I've talked about a lot of this throughout, right? Our self-concept didn't get created consciously, all right? But your sense of self changes all the time. It totally can change. It changes all the time. If you're a woman and all of a sudden you decide to have a baby, as soon as you have that baby, your new identity is mother. If you're the father there, your new identity is father immediately. Like, it changes right away, okay? If you're somebody who's going to actually, quit addiction or something, and you ask them, hey, have you stopped drinking or whatever, and they keep telling you how many days they've stopped drinking, they still don't identify with being sober. They're still wrestling and doing the day thing. But there'll be a time, if they make it, where they actually go, no, I'm just sober. Like, I'm sober. I don't do it anymore. Like, that's not me. I'm no longer an addict anymore. I've actually re-identified. And 12-step programs, if anybody's in that, they always say they're in recovery and all that, and they keep the identity of an addict to protect themselves. But I assure you that there's a new identity that comes in there, okay? And so we didn't consciously create this self-concept, but you're no longer your 10-year-old self. You're no longer your 20-year-old self. You're now the version of you now. But what we do is, like that painting, we keep building who we are on top of who we were yesterday, and not much change happens, okay? But what's possible is we can actually go in there and completely rewire who we are, right? We can actually go find every one of those limits, those negative lenses, and we can repattern them so that they seem ridiculous, and we've normalized these new, more powerful, more useful mindsets in. I'm not talking about just affirmations, right? I'm talking about wiring in your subconscious, right, a new version of what's possible for you, so that you actually show up like, whoa, I can do anything. I mean, it borders like that matrix change of like downloading how to do this stuff. When you actually get rid of your limits, what your greatest superpowers show up. That's what's phenomenal. Your greatest superpowers show up when you address your greatest limits. And let me explain why that is, right? If you take a child who's naturally funny, right, could be a great comedian one day, just amazingly funny, has all these different abilities and finds things funny. You take somebody else who's really good at dancing and very physically, maybe an athlete or something, right? Well, the funny person, whenever we actually, as a child, act in our strength, what are we doing? We're actually not being normal. We're not being obedient. We're not being whatever. So if a kid's funny all the time, what he may start hearing is, stop being funny. Shut up, cut it out, stop being different, right? To our overwhelmed parents, they're just trying to get by. We end up inadvertently shutting down our greatest strengths of our children and people. In school, we become the class clown. Well, the teacher might shame us or call us out for that. And when those things happen, we start to shut down the brightest things about us, okay? If you're a great public speaker, maybe you try to talk all the time, people say, why do you talk all the time? Shut up. And that's all it takes to shut down that beautiful dimension, that beautiful facet of you. The kid who's naturally athletic maybe runs a lot, maybe hurts himself a lot, maybe does stuff, and all of a sudden starts to hear from parents and teachers and friends, cut it out, like stop being so antsy, stop acting so much, right? And again, it gets shut down, and maybe that person doesn't end up being as athletic as they could be or whatever. Later in life, those natural abilities, when we can rewire those limits, those things that we most got picked on about and all that, they end up becoming your superpower, which is just phenomenal when it happens, okay? So I want to say again that even if we try to bring willpower to something, right? I wrote a little short 11-page ebook on willpower and how to use it. It's an incredible tool, right? We do want to bring our conscious attention to bringing change, okay? But if that's all we do, right? If that's all we do, we're fighting a huge uphill battle, and it's going to take so long, and it's going to be so hard to do. And when we finally get it done, what ended up happening anyway was just changing the self-concept, right? It was just doing it long enough so that eventually the subconscious mind and the self-concept can say, oh, cool, I got it, that's us now, I dig it. because it won't do things that are unsafe to it. It really resists change, and it stays in doing what it did yesterday because that's the safest thing to do, and that's why we feel stuck all the time. Okay, so habit is awesome and willpower is awesome, but that's not where the game is. The game is actually getting in and rewiring our self-concept. So now I want to tell you about this group that I'm running. Okay, here's this thing that I have coming up where I'm going to do this with a small group of people, and I've already got a handful of people in the group. I'm so excited to work with them, and I've got just a few spots left. And I don't know if you can see above where I'm talking now, but there should be a button where it says apply now. The reason I'm doing applications is because this isn't going to be right for everyone, right? And it might not be right for you. It's only going to be right for people that can have a huge evolution in the 6-week period. I'm only inviting people that can really do it. And I'm talking to everybody beforehand. I'm going to have a half hour with you on a call where we actually talk about it, see what you want to create, see what you think you can do, and all that. And only then do I say, yes, you're in. Okay, so for people that are checking out this webinar and doing this, if going further, if actually doing this for you and actually changing profoundly within probably the first couple weeks of the 6-week program, right? Like we're going to do the really big stuff up front. I'm going to tell you how it all works in just a second, but like 2 weeks, you'll be like, I can't believe what I did, right? That's my intention for this thing. And I'm doing it so that we all evolve, right? You're not going to get left behind. This isn't just like an info product and I kind of pop in. Like I'm going to be working with everybody that's in this thing, okay? And so if this feels like something important for you to check out, do the application, take a look, tell me a little bit more about yourself, and I'll let you know like if you're a fit or not, and then we'll have the conversation of how it's right, okay? There's nothing to buy here, there's nothing like that. Just fill out the application and let me know that you're interested, and tell me a little bit about yourself through that process, and then I will get back in touch with you and we'll have a conversation if it's a fit, okay? So let me tell you what's in this, right? There's only a few spots left. I'm only taking applications. I need to personally talk to everyone who's considering it, and I'm only giving it to people who are going to get an incredible result. And excuse me, I've priced it so that it's less than what like an entry-level life coach costs, really. You're going to be getting the most cutting-edge self-change processes that are amazing. Most of what I'm doing is based in stuff I've done for a decade and gotten consistent results with hundreds, if not thousands, of people over the past decade, but then I'm adding on top my newest, latest, and greatest, best stuff, okay? And just to give you an overview of how it's going to start, we're going to start with getting connected in the community. There's going to be an accountability practice. There's going to be partners in this thing. We're all going to do this together. We're going to meet in a video group so that it's all like, we know each other and it's really, really cool and it's a safe space. And we're going to create this awesome kind of community of the group, right? That's what's going to happen. And then we're going to address your deepest limits directly and individually. It's not like, hey, here's the thing, go do it yourself. It's like, hey, here's the thing, go do it, and then I'm going to work on it with you, and we're going to evolve it, okay? Through hypnotic audios, which are just really visualizations and things like that. Don't get freaked out if hypnosis weirds you out. It's just a way to directly talk to your subconscious and allow in positive ideas and good stuff to you. But we're also going to do visualizations that are not hypnotic, that are really, really powerful. I'm so incredibly excited about this. So let me just tell you specifically what's in it. The entire group will evolve. Like no one will be left behind. I'm going to insist that we all get there. It's going to be profound for anyone that's in it, okay? There's going to be weekly calls with me, which is going to be like the backbone of it. That's where we're all going to definitely meet. And you'll get spot coaching from me in that process. And I may add other calls if we need them, right? If there's more to do, if there's more stuck places, I'm committed to this, so I'm going to do more. But there's definitely going to be sort of 6 weekly group calls with the group to go through this stuff and do the evolution, right? You're going to choose new identities for yourself in different aspects of your life. So you're going to have a new money and finance identity, right? We're going to test that glass ceiling about what's possible for you and get you aligned with a much bigger future financially for yourself. We're also going to do that around health and fitness, because if you don't have your health, what's the point, right? If you start getting sick or you're too fat or you can't get up and you're tired and all that stuff. So we're going to talk about like what's your identity need to be around health and fitness. Should you have ripped abs? Should you feel really good? Should you have other habits in that you haven't been able to habituate before? We're going to shift your identity around money and finance, business, career, all that. We're going to shift it around health and fitness. and we're going to shift it around relationships and consciousness, or excuse me, confidence. Okay, we're going to directly deal with confidence, and we're going to directly deal with relationships. All right. Now, if any one of those is more interesting to you or not, of course, we'll focus more on that for you. But what's positively going to happen in this is you're going to have a whole new concept of yourself in all these core areas of your life that matter the most to you. Okay. You're also going to get, excuse me, everything that's in my core program. Okay, so along with this, I'm going to be dripping out content from the core to you, which includes, high definition training videos that clarify the ideas and the knowledge that these shifts are based on and is important. You're going to get cutting edge hypnotic audios from that program that permanently and passively recode your subconscious mind all the way at the core of you. We're going to do at least 2 big life-altering visualization exercises that are going to be amazing. I'm going to take you through the fundamental shift patterning process, which takes you through how to actually recode those limiting lenses that you have. We have home fun exercises, which is where you go back and kind of come up with your own custom stuff that we can work on in the next session. And the patterning process, just to call that out, that gets rid of all those deepest limiting beliefs of yours. Right? Your greatest weaknesses will actually become your greatest strengths. There's a process to pull out those deepest limits that you can't even see. And you're going to learn about your core limiting story. You have a core overriding limiting story that if we don't rewrite that, you're not going to get the evolution. So we're going to find that, we're going to rewrite that, and it's going to be absolutely amazing. The hypnotic stuff helps you open to being able to change. Right, so that that scared part that is the natural protection to change, we're going to open that up so that change is exciting and safe, and we can naturally and safely grow and kind of expand into what's possible for us. We're also going to pattern in joy and presence and happiness and the now and all this really cool stuff so that we're actually deeply fulfilled in our lives as well, because it's not just about accomplishment, it's also about fulfillment. There's going to be a whole big section on shadow work, states and stages in shadow and how they all play together, and how I'm going to do a visualization and a journaling exercise with you guys so that we can evolve out of any of those limiting shadow stuff. And the last time I did this for a group of 15 people live once, and more than once, but this one time that I'm thinking of, the last time, I did it for 12 people, and this might not be attractive, actually, I should maybe rethink this, but 12 of the 15 people were like sobbing at the end of it because it was such a release, such an emotional breakthrough. And when I say sobbing, they weren't like sad, they were like moved, like wow, like I had no idea that was limiting me this whole time. I had no idea I was seeing it that way. Holy crap, right? Totally new realities for these people, okay? And the other 3 had like profound things, they just weren't crying. Like I talked about it after I had them do like a write-up of what their experience was. Everyone had this huge realization through this stages, and shadow work thing. We're going to have a whole big section. Once we actually evolve you to the best version of you that's like amazing, first off, you're going to then know how to do that continually. So you'll know how to kind of upgrade yourself all the time. So this isn't something that you'll need me after this. You're going to get this technology and you're going to understand what's at play in your mind and why these kind of limits come up for you. And should anything like that happen in the future, you'll just be able to kind of walk right past it. It's going to be awesome. But once we do that, right, remember how your money goal was probably smaller than what's maybe really possible for you? Now we're going to get into what your purpose and your passion and all that stuff is. So we're going to deal with your biggest limits, get you to amazing, and then from amazing, go, what's your purpose from here? Right? What's this stuff? And by the way, this isn't going to self-correct. You can't unring this bell. So this isn't like something that's just going to work for a month and then you're going to fall back into it, okay? This is going to evolve you so that you have the new skills and new techniques and new identity, real identity, not like you're faking it. Like really have a new self-concept of yourself that is on a whole nother level, okay? And this is going to, quote-unquote, pay for itself just forever. Like how much better does that guy become with all the growth and all the stuff that way? So anyway, we're going to do a passion, purpose, and profit. Kind of line all those up so that you can really get connected to what your purpose is, your unique purpose. Like, you're going to find that, you're going to know what it is, we're all going to share it, we're going to support each other in playing big and doing all this cool stuff, and it's going to be exciting. And to our limited self, that might sound scary, but it won't be scary because you won't be dealing with that. You'll have confidence and all this stuff. It's going to be amazing, okay? The other thing, which I'm not going to go deep into here, but it's amazing, there's a guy named Genpo Roshi who has this big mind exercise. I'm going to do an exercise with you guys where we talk about the different aspects of yourself, like your victim identity, your hero identity, all these different parts of you, because a lot of people get stuck in a victim identity and they think that's all they are, but you're all these other dimensions and facets too. And then at the end of that, there's a very opening experience, so I'm going to take you through that as well. There's an accountability partner practice, which is going to have you be accountable with somebody else so that you actually get this done. You're not going to drift off and just be away and like not be a part of this. You're going to actually come in and be held accountable and make friends. You know, every time I've joined a group or done anything, one of the most valuable things I've got from them are the connections and the friendships and the people that I've met. So we're all going to get to know each other, but you're going to be paired with one or more accountability partners so that you guys actually have a relationship and actually can hold each other accountable. And to anybody that might be thinking about doing coaching or being a coach, it's going to be really neat to teach you an accountability practice and kind of how to set that up. That's something that's kind of fundamental to helping people change through the process, right? So we got a whole big accountability partner practice happening with this thing. We're also going to go through an ecology practice, okay? One of the biggest reasons that if somebody, even if they do lose weight or they do hit the lottery or they do, you know, change in some way, a lot of times the people around them, right, the 5 people that you spend the most time with ends up being, you kind of end up being the average of them, right? Well, you know, if your family doesn't support new eating habits, right, it's that much harder to keep the change going because your ecology isn't supportive of you. Right, your friends, your relationships, the ecology of your life, the whole of your life, not just you, but all the systems and all the habits and all the other people that are influencing you, right? One of the biggest things to help someone lose weight, as an example, is obviously like, what do you need to do? How do you need to change internally? What do you need to do, you know, workout-wise and all that? You lose a little bit of weight. If you haven't changed your identity fully, well, what's going to happen? A lot of your friends are going to be jealous of you. They might be like, come on, don't you still eat ice cream? Like, you're not even fun anymore. Like, I want to go out. And why do they do that? Why do they start criticizing you? They do it because they don't feel good about who they are. Your change is threatening to them in some way, right? And their habits don't fit your habits and all that stuff. So we have a real ecological problem when we try to do massive change, when we actually try to become you know, this just much better in a lot of different areas in our life. And so I have this ecology practice where we're going to be putting in something. I'm not going to tell you a lot about it here, but so that we can actually affect that ecology directly, so that change is not just you, but it's actually helpful with the whole systems of your life and all that stuff. And I'm also going to be throwing in bonuses that you can do kind of whenever you want. On the side of this, I'm going to be including my Master Money and Wealth system. Okay, so obviously if we invest any money in anything, it's really good to kind of get something back that's going to get us money. Well, if you have goals around increasing your finance, you're going to increase your money. You're going to get the new job. You're going to do whatever. Like, we're going to insist on that level change in you. But it's also really important that you manage your money and wealth really well. And there's a couple of tips, a couple of techniques in that so that you can have just a whole different kind of relationship with your money. You can fall into a love affair with your money, and you can respect it, and you can manage it, and you can have savings habits and investment habits and actually grow your wealth. And so I did a whole long thing. I think it's you know, it's a whole system on how to do that. And you're going to get that bonus if you end up being in this program. So you're also going to get my Goals 2.0 video program, a system of how to create quarterly goals that are otherworldly, totally connect you, get you like connected to who the people in your life that you need to get with, what are the habits, what are the actual outcomes that you need to do, and it's a whole system on how to brainstorm those out and really play a bigger game in your life. I'm also going to add in bonus hypnotic audios, this one that's called a dissociation technique, another one that's called immediate freedom now, and I'm going to share other talks of mine and little known things that are really, really cool. So there's a lot of material with this. The core of it is in the group, right? It's in the meeting and in the evolution. And it's going to be me finding your stuff with you and repatterning it, and it's going to be simply amazing, okay? Just the passion part alone is absolutely enough to be worth it, right? If you find your passion and your purpose, like forget all this shifting yourself stuff. If you just found that, wouldn't that be like kind of amazing, right? But here's what I'm going to tell you. That's what most people think, okay? It would be amazing if you found that, and that might be enough to change you a little bit, okay? But if you don't then actually change yourself, you're going to be bringing all these limits, all these self-sabotage, all these things holding you back that you can't even see, right, into this, and you're not going to be effective, and it's going to be frustrating. You're going to keep kind of like Groundhog's Day, kind of not getting there. So I'm so excited about connecting you to the new version of you, right, that is the best version of you, the version inside that you know you could or should be, right, where you go, wow, I know there's a version of me that, like, gets this done, right, like really takes action, does all the cool stuff, right? I want you to connect into that and get excited, and I want you to realize that that version then can get connected to a passion and a purpose that's just so much huger. So I think that's mostly what I wanted to talk about. I mean, we went over just a ton today, and I'm super excited that we've done all this. It doesn't seem, at least I'm not seeing it. Let me actually go and see if I can get Kayla here. Are you still with me, Kayla?
I'm still here, of course.
Awesome. So I'm not sure. Are you seeing any comments? Am I just seeing something wrong
here?
Yes,
we do have some comments. There's actually, I have a question.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Christina, if you have a moment. Her question is reflecting on your example of the girl being told she was fat and the guy being made fun of. What can we do for our children to help them not take these experiences to heart?
That's a really good question. Wow, I love that. Who asked that, by the way?
That's from Christina.
Okay, all right. Hey, Christina. That's a fantastic question. So one, obviously, you're going to have a good enough relationship with your child to hear when that's kind of happening, right? You're going to have to know that something like that went on. And I think one of the most important things is knowing that a little thing like that can lead to such a big effect later, right, is important. And so if you have the relationship where you're, often you will find that your child will come home from school and they'll be sad. And when they talk about a certain friend or something, they get quiet, right? We can kind of tell when something's off, right? Something happened at school. So having the dialogue with them to really find out what happened at school, right? To know what it is, to get to that with them, so that they don't just shut down and feel embarrassed to talk to you about it, or just that it gets actually into their subconscious and it never gets addressed, right? We want to be in touch with them enough that we can know something went on. And then once we find that it went on, really just talking to them lovingly about other options, right? Finding out how they're making meaning of it, okay? So, you know, if my girlfriend, lover, partner, you know, love of my life has an amazing son, Manny, who is like the other love of my life. Like, I just adore this child. And, you know, if I see him come back and he's distressed or sad or upset or anything like that, I want to find out what his meaning making is about that. So a big part of this course is going to be about figuring out how we make meaning, because we can change the meaning and it changes everything, right? So finding out if he goes, you know, kids don't like me or something, right? That's a horrible meaning to have, right? Actually talking to your child all the way back to what really happened and putting the most advantageous meaning of that in there, and talking to them so that they understand that just because they were made fun of in that moment doesn't mean that they're not liked, doesn't mean, right, all these other bad things. It actually means very little in the moment, and it just means they were having a tough time, or that person felt like a bully, or whatever, right? So having that open dialogue, finding it, and then helping them find the most useful meaning, okay? And again, truth doesn't matter here, because he could argue truthfully that happened, but all of a sudden we look through lenses, and what's true is often partial to what really happened, or it's a certain interpretation of what happened. So what we want to make sure that we do is help our children become the most advantageous meaning makers that we can, right? So maybe that's a meta thing up one level, is not just in the immediate addressing a problem, even before it occurs, helping them understand that we can always interpret things differently, and that it's most powerful to interpret things as advantageously as possible and as useful as possible for us. So I'm going to go into that in a lot more depth in the program for anybody who's interested. Again, there's an application button. There's no, you know, you're not buying anything, or just if this is interesting, definitely apply and see what happens, and we'll see if there's a fit, and we'll end up having a conversation about it. So I hope that answered her question, and she can write back if it did or didn't. And if there are any other questions, you can let me know.
I've actually got a question from me, if
Okay,
you don't
yeah.
mind. I'm not sure if the application button is popping up for everyone, so I'm going to go ahead and link to the application in our Facebook chat, if that works
Awesome.
for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Just to make sure everyone gets it.
Let me see if, I don't know if I can change that really quick too. But yes, that's the problem. So please put the link there, and we can probably email that out to people as well, which would be helpful. So I love technical glitches. Aren't they awesome? They happen all the time. So yeah. So are there any other things that came up? I feel like the comment system probably didn't work perfectly either. And you know, that's a shame. But if there's any other questions, I'm happy to deal with them. If you have any, you can
We
type
didn't
them
get
in.
a lot of questions. I think we got a really smart group here.
Yeah, nice.
But there were definitely
Good.
some really nice comments. Maritza really agrees with the concept of we're all deluded, and she also really responded to the idea of lenses, and I know that that's going to be a really big part of the group. So
Yeah,
I'm glad that
yeah.
she responded to those concepts.
Yeah, for sure. Like mastering your lenses is really the game, right? So mastering kind of how we see and being able to alter those lenses, and that's really what this group is going to be about. We're going to dramatically change those lenses for people. So if there's no other questions, I think we're way over, and I guess I pre-intended that I might go almost an hour and a half here. So I'll let people kind of go do that. If the application button isn't there for you, I'll mail it out to everybody who signed up for this. And thank you, Kayla, for being there, and thank you everybody else. This has been really fun. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.